Hello, I'm IskatuMesk, and joining us today is Keyan, who's playing as my new PC number 3, that's 3, and Beav, just Beav, that's it, just Beav. We have, in the top lane, TheShambler, and myself, Todd's, versus Frauds. I forget the map name. To be fair, I never even looked at it. But I did look at, though, is that new probe graphic. Indeed. So, this is a 2v2 we played yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Trying to play the game immediately after doing a lot of heavy lifting, driving around, and climbing and pulling stuff up hills in insane heat and direct sunlight. Was an incredibly poor decision. It was a very poor decision. I do not play well in these games at all. And most of the time I'm completely zonked out. But we had a couple of matches before these, so I wasn't wholly out of it, just mostly out of it. And we have TheShambler playing as Protoss. I think he said he didn't have too good of a game either, but to be fair, I hardly really paid attention to what was going on his side of the map, except for key points. On the flip side, we have Keyan, who had issues with his keyboard in the previous attempt at a game, and had some issues with grid hotkeys in this game. Well, I'm also trying to learn grid hotkeys, and let me tell you, it's an absolute fucking disaster. So, in the top right, we have this APM display here. We can see who is spamming and who isn't spamming. And I can tell you I won't be doing too much spamming because the arthritis in my left hand is getting to be very severe. And that finger the pinky finger is also busted. So, not too much spamming on my behalf. So there's a little bit of a kerfluffy here. Ooh, executed one Mason. And I didn't really pay attention to what's going on down here. But TheShambler is described as being chased by Beaver. And unbeknownst to all, there's a single... Absolutely brutalized. So workers have slightly more health now. Slightly more health. It does help them a little bit early on. Not in a huge amount, but it helps them a little bit. Actually, more notably is that a single Madrigal takes an extra shot or two to actually kill them, which is potentially significant in certain circumstances, given that Madrigals kind of kill everything on contact. So I actually hit my Fulcrum over here, and this scout died, and I never saw it go over to the Fulcrum, so it was actually a high probability they never saw it at all. Not that it really bears worth hiding that, it's just more of a fake out to make them think I might be going some other hidden tech like Wraiths. Not that Wraiths are terrifying or anything, but they do exist, they are a thing, so 3 Mavericks are going up there, followed by a 4th one and a worker. Well, Beaver's probably going to be building some feet. Meanwhile, this Vulture is over here just to kind of poke around. I already saw he had a Dracoden, but he kind of misplays it. Absolutely violent. So I was trying to bait them into here, but the Hierophant's already got some damage on it, so I didn't really accomplish too much there. Two sets of fumbles. Meanwhile, we can see that TheShambler is going for Barghists, who may or may not have been nerfed since I last used them, I'm not sure. Meanwhile, there's feet over here. I'm sure TheShambler suspects some kind of feet-related activity. There is Mavericks in this bunker, but it's not exactly in an ideal place to actually stop air harass because, well, that's all the way over there. So he chooses to stim and run over there, and TheShambler's Barghest narrowly escapes, as there is some shenanigans going on in that direction. They hop back into the bunker. They burn stim kind of pointlessly. TheShambler's just going to kind of peek around and go over towards Keyan's base. Oh, it's going to be a train wreck, but Keyan responds relatively quickly and is able to prevent any real damage to his back line. What it is doing is tying them up. I got the bunker there with some Cyclops. Cyclops seemed like a decent general all-around unit, although getting them does slow down your gas income. So the Barghest returns home and not really accomplished too much. Killed like 1 worker. Forcing Beaver to make a watchdog with some idle workers there hypothetically can work out well. I'm doing a little bit of flustering here, but he is somehow able to land, so it doesn't really go too well. And take a little bit of damage as a result. I'm not really too worried about that. is the contain doesn't really affect me too much because this map has so many expansions that are very safe for me to get. But Shambler comes over here. And Keyan ends up disengaging. So that allows Shambler to come over here. Shambler decides to start attacking this bunker. I don't know. It seems may as well just leave it there, but he didn't want it to be there, so he's going to keep attacking it. Meanwhile, IHS sends a worker over there to scout out that expansion as Shambler tries to at least push the bunker into the red here. Takes a little bit of damage, so I decide to send this down at that exact moment. Absolutism strikes. Keyan decides to charge forward, and that bunker is going to die. The Marines like popped out of it, so they took a little bit of damage. And Shambler is able to thwart that quite handily. That bunker explodes, and a number of workers are heading in this general direction for a back door. Meanwhile, Beaver is actually building a treasury first, and not going for a fulcrum or anything like that. One foot to rule them all, and in the darkness, step on them. Oh, step on me, mommy. May as well get all their energy out today, because in just a few days, I will be transitioning, and it will probably involve some kind of social media adventure. It also will involve me being unable to cast again. Meanwhile, Beaver comes over here and discovers a warden about to finish. He charges in. Oh, a little bit of a kerfluffle. Shambler takes some damage here. Units move in. Many scribes die. Mavericks just attack whatever. Tickling. Shambler ended up taking a lot of damage from that. I actually had no idea that happened. It's not like you get notices for allies being attacked or whatever. I saw he was over here and I sent down a Goliath to offer emotional support, but multitasking really wasn't my thing in that game. So I actually made a treasury and a commencer. I went for a very greedy opening since I saw that they had lost quite a lot of money worth of units in that attack. There wasn't really a lot, but I wasn't really paying attention a huge amount. The Goliath ends up dying. I didn't know he was pulling back. I thought we were going to the Nad. But I kind of like weave in here and try to make the most out of what I can. It turns out this fucking vulture ends up just causing them some pain. They take a lot of damage from the one spider mine. And that does allow Shambler to get in some damage. He gets quite a lot of effectiveness out of his relatively small attack group here. And a lot of Keyan's units are quite wounded now. Particularly the Draconans. I thought the Zealot was also wounded, but I guess it's just the two Draconans. Some Marines are kind of wounded as well. So it's a fairly large attack force, but it's kind of hurt. At this point, Shambler's like, oh, we're going to die terribly. He's got an expansion out he could lose, and of course he lost most of his workers, right? So it's kind of in a bad spot, but I do have an amount of Goliaths here, and Keyan kind of just tries to charge the ram. But the Hierophants are the ones that go up first, and they're not really as tanky, and they don't do much damage. So he takes a lot of damage from that. Oh, so Beaver wasn't there to support him. So it was kind of like the inverse of what happened on the bottom where my Goliath got out of position because I wasn't there. And but just a little bit more severe where they lost quite a bit in exchange for pretty much nothing. So it seems like they might come up here again. I think Beaver is just trying to get an idea of what was up there. But now they get kind of cold feet. They do have a large amount of units. But I got a third fulcrum and I got an expansion up here starting to work. Again, Keyan tries to move forward, but Beaver is not there. So I kind of can just sit on this ledge and just let the flash shielding keep me stable. I come down here and I'm like, oh shit, Beaver has a ton of units down there. Why are they down there and not up here? Beaver doesn't really want to engage. He's got cold feet. He may be a little wary about the spider mines, because one spider mine possesses the capacity to kill almost every single thing he has. Meanwhile, that my CC landed down here, and I'm happily idling some workers. Shambler is slowly trying to repair his worker line and protect himself from another potential all-in. Keyan's kind of like trying to lure units down there. Units move over here. There's a couple of Cyclops in that bunker, well more capable of dealing with the Mavericks. Nothing really to worry about. Some units are going to come around there. Beaver's got some defenses over here. Only one of those bunkers has anything in it. And he never took his net. So I'm actually well ahead on bases at the moment of everybody. Even though they're not mining very much at all. This is possibly oversaturated. I can't do counting. I'm Canadian, so numbers are just not really my thing. So kind of just stuck on the defensive. I'm kind of like holding out for like tier 2 or whatever. I mean, let's see, I've got a fair amount of money. That will be the Atlas that comes up right now. I figured the contain was a lot stronger than it was. There actually is not really much of a contain going on at all. We're kind of just seeding that front because it doesn't do us any good to actually fight those units. I'm really well turtled up, and Shambler can take this time to actually do stuff. Meanwhile, he's got a Bargus coming down here to scout, and Beaver's got units over here which are going to attack that. I actually forgot about that net quite a lot. So, Shambler decides to attack down there. Like I said, my focus was really low in this game, and probably all these games, even lower than usual. So, the Vagrants have like, they look like Fisher-Price copy machines or something on their arms. It's really strange looking. It's just not doesn't really look like a weapon to me. It's too round and yeah. So a unified attack force comes down here. This treasury is pretty much fucked. Nothing I can do about it. This is idling still because I'm bad. I'm not really too worried at the moment, but it does slow me down a little bit. Shambler chooses to pull back everything. He was going to go to their base. Not really a wise idea to attack their base, though, in general, because we are kind of on the back foot, especially him. So, Vultures coming here mostly just to hold them off for a little while. They do some damage to them. It's they're Vultures. Some of them die with mines in them, which isn't that good. But we can get them in this narrow choke. Then, yeah, Shambler will just come up behind them and kill them. And the clerics are healing themselves, so they're going to lose this attack for us. It was an alright attack. More importantly is to shut down the expansion and did kill the treasury. And since I forgot about that base, it's not very good. So definitely a little sleeping on the job here. Now I realize it existed. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I took that. Because I so rarely take a third that fast. So I just kind of forgot it existed. Keyan's going to take a base down here. He's going here. It's also idling. And I think we're going to see an Atlas come out of Beaver now. So Beaver, now even on bases, but you see I moved my Atlas over here. I think I actually hid it from them. I moved it over there to hide it from them. I also thought it might die, but I also didn't want them to know I had tier 2 already. The problem is that losing that expansion puts me in such a state where I can't do too much with the Atlas at the moment. So I saw that Shambler was going to go down here, so I sent some of my units to follow him. Just for emotional support, not really looking to provide actual damage to the enemy, but force them to build defenses and slow down their attacks. So I can go back here and take this expansion and build a command center there, mostly because I didn't trust in my multitasking to handle the quarry and the building of workers from the quarry. It wasn't working out too well for me, and I was having issues with multitasking as it was. So sometimes I will make decisions based on that kind of criteria. However, it's kind of like at this point where they're not really doing too much now. Oh, that Bargus dies pointlessly. But it does tell us that there's an expansion over there anyways. So at this point, I'm going to start getting some tanks. And they're really just to set our ledge because I kind of expected a large attack. But there's actually a group of units coming over here from Keyan. It just so happens to run into us along the way. And I found it really, really coincidental that they're over here. Now, Shambler can fight this, but I think he wanted to get them onto the bridge first. I'm trying to like scoop behind them to get mines on them. They kill the Vulture, but I think it ties up a little bit of their damage, so it lets us push forward. There's a lot of Mavericks coming up from behind. So we're definitely going to keep them on the back foot here as we start floating a grotesque amount of money, albeit not as much as the enemy team currently is. So a lot of shit over here. I was hoping to kill these workers with the 2 Cyclops I had left here. They couldn't really get in, and their damage really wasn't that high. So didn't really accomplish too much. Meanwhile, the Mavericks came up from behind, but they are Mavericks. The wounded Cyclops will actually lend a fair bit of damage to this, getting them low enough for the us units to finish them off. So we actually end up killing all those Mavericks. There's more over here. But yeah, we didn't stop the expansion. We did kill a lot of units, and we delayed them from taking another offensive action for a while. That gives us some time to breathe, right? So Shambler is still quite behind in workers in general, and it's definitely hurting economically. You can see, however, he's getting the Astral Omen, which is this one's building an Exemplar, which will be quite useful against those Mavericks. Keyan's choosing to attack up here, but he just doesn't have that many units, and his units are kind of getting separated, so it doesn't go well for him. Suffice to say, he's not going to break my wall anytime soon, and he's not really going to have much luck over here either. They already took a lot of damage from the tank, and this bunker also gets damage in, so that plus the Exemplar thwarts that. There is a lot of Mavericks over here with an Anseal. Shambler is just kind of like poking around. I don't think he got sight of those Stargates. So just sort of spamming up seconds. Fulcrum this expansion slowly, saturating. This one's idling. Mavericks come over here. Madrigals feel a little awkward to micro sometimes, and you have to actually be paying attention, which I wasn't. So I was kind of worried about the Mavericks running in and killing the tanks. And I also figured that Keyan's forces would be short behind. So I'm not going to move those tanks over here. So that attack force is dealt with. As I scout around here, knowing that there is an expansion there, I start setting up over here. Now, I suspected it was going to be a lot of Wardens defending the expansion. The Vultures probably wouldn't be able to get too much done, especially since, well, it was right next to where his production would be anyways. So I kind of just like hold this out. I figured there would have been an expansion here, and that's what I was going to harass. But since there wasn't, I decided just to camp out in this corner and place a whole ton of mines. They're going to sit there for a while, and I'm going to bring over some sieged phalanxes. I consider the magical drops kind of wasteful if you're not guaranteed to get a lot of damage in, because it is 100 gas. However, with sieged phalanxes, you can hypothetically get unit kills in addition to worker kills, and it's also a lot more likely to be able to kill some structures along the way. So I was generally tending more towards using phalanx drops instead. Meanwhile, Beaver has taken this base and is working on this one as well. So he's about to take a lead in bases. And that's kind of a scary spot to be in. But you can see that Shambler is getting a lot of money now. He's stashed up on a lot of money. And you can see now the two Trojans with phalanxes in them are heading down as I just build kind of spattering of random units. Not really looking towards tier 3 at this moment because it was quite clear. I figured there was going to be another big attack coming, and I am right. There is Mad Caps and other units heading there, and very possibly, I think Shambler mentioned at some point that there could be Apostles coming. Because, I mean, he has the captaincy already. So, I decided to scout over here, and he says he's playing like a retard. Well, I didn't really feel like he was playing really any worse. He's just behind is all. It's, he took a lot of damage early on, and that was kind of about it. So maybe he like got too aggressive sometimes, but my drop instantly gets destroyed by a horde of Panoptists. So that was kind of unexpected, but it gives me some forewarning. If the Panoptists had attacked me first, it could have been a lot more than a loss. So that said, the Exemplars are moving forward, and they're doing a lot of damage to Beaver, but the Panoptists could come up here and kill them if he's not careful. So once I see Panoptists, I know I have to start building some kind of ants here. I'm bringing over the Cyclops over there, but they're really not going to do too well. I also find microing really awkward with grid hotkeys in general. So, like, I had no success with Panoptists at all in an earlier game against Shambler. So. One over here killing some workers. There's him warning about apostles. The stray exemplar got instantly erased. So I figure the Cyclops may not be able to kill all the Panoptises, but should deal a huge amount of damage to them. And the reality is that I actually never checked what their damage is, and it's really low. So, yeah, the Panoptis is got quite a bit of health. So I was going to lure them out with the Vultures. Some of them still have mines in them. And but then the Vultures all died. And I was like, damn it, I needed him to chase them so they could be all clustered. So I had to kind of like show my hand here. So we got one Panoptis out, but then the targeting got a little fucked when they were microing, so we did a little bit of damage. If I had a second group of Cyclops, I probably would have actually killed them. Or a couple of Madrigals, actually. So there's a beaver attack force heading down here. I built another treasury. And I believe I'll actually get vision of his units. And I will see them. And you're going to see me start to move all my stuff down there as a result. Meanwhile, Shambler is heading to the Templar Archives. He's going to start building Archons. And Archons are very beefy and have a lot of armor. So they'll actually do quite well. So there's a Sentinel here, which is getting some damage in. And taking some heat off of my squishier units. And Beaver's attack force is very easily destroyed. So I thought there might have been more units down there because his Goliath's still stuck around. It turns out there isn't. Shambler is, however, going to check out down here. Beaver is just got an absolutely disgusting amount of money, and so does Keyan, but their gas is not looking too hot. Shambler is repelled by the tanks and determines he can't really do too much at all. Now, Keyan is finally going to move out again. He's got a gabillion shuttles filled with assorted units. I thought they all had a Cantors in them. I was like, oh no. And he's actually just going to miss Shambler over here, which could have provided some early warning. But Shambler may or may not actually be aware of this. I think he's just going to miss it again. Just! Oh, shit. Oh, shit! Shambler had no idea. So these units move over here. I see them. I ping. The tanks kind of move back. I thought they were Candors. I saw other units came out and I was like, okay, that could be worse. It could be better. He kind of gets a little separated here. His ground units over here kind of get picked apart by the phalanxes. And I kind of just like dive in because I wasn't sure whose units were which at the moment, actually. So some balls come out. The Panoptises go for the ground. There's nothing my tanks can do at this moment. And an Archon pops out. And the attack is immediately quenched. So Shambler lost some defenses and some workers and some military units. And I lost some military units. But it was a huge investment of an attack. So as far as trades are concerned, it was definitely in our favor. He definitely had the potential to deal a lot more damage. But the Archon and everything there being there just kind of in the nick of time really helped deflect it. So Shambler now wants to go down here with the rest of his remaining forces and tickle Beaver's nuts again. And he definitely has the damage to do this. Meanwhile, I have an attack force of more concentrated size that's going to head over for Keyan instead. So Shambler is immediately going to destroy that line. However, I have a lot less success. And kind of like pull him back here to the wall of mines, kind of like fainting. Remember, I want to actually be able to destroy this expansion, so trying not to lose all my units. Meanwhile, this expansion is taking quite a lot of damage. But some of Shambler's units here are getting a little separated. That command center might actually get away. It actually stands a good chance of getting away. Meanwhile, an Exemplar is going to die an avoidable death to the Sentinel. Over here, this back and forth is still going on with Keyan quite able to deflect this attack. I had less success with that attack than I did with smaller ones in the past. Meanwhile, TheShambler is able to deal actually quite a bit of damage over here, destroying this expansion. This command center may actually just burn down. More workers are running to the front and dying horribly. And the Goliaths are struggling a little bit against the Exemplar here, taking lots of splash damage. But the Exemplar are already kind of wounded, so he's able to survive. This command center is about to die. Ha! 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 No! Down it goes. So it wasn't just that Keyan was able to deflect my attack forces. It was that Keyan would deflect them and then just leave them alone. So I'd always have units just kind of chilling out over here doing absolutely nothing. He'd rebuild his wall, and that would be that. I started making Valkyries because if he was going to continue to build Panoptises, there was a very easy way to deal with them. And I also had hoped I could bait out his Panoptises into that side. But as time passed on, I decided we were going to do something really cheeky. So I've got a Mason heading down to the bottom right, as TheShambler loses another Exemplar. And I just had some units over here just chilling out still. I never moved these tanks because I figured there might actually be a second drop attempt at some point. So I just kind of wanted them there just as an assurance. Besides, if he drops them on top of the tanks, then he doesn't drop them on top of TheShambler's worker line. So they have the potential to be somewhat useful. Since Keyan didn't want this expansion and didn't want to commit to defending this place, I figured I was just going to keep applying pressure there and keep drawing him away from TheShambler and everything else. I started to make a gabillion Gorgons, and TheShambler seems to be under the impression that I'm actually carrying him in this game, which I'm really not. I'm not doing too much. But that could change. That definitely could change. There's some cheeky shit going on. There's some Ramses here that are going to die absolutely terribly. I thought they did splash, but I guess not. They do splash. Just not splash. The one vulture was taking no damage. So I'm not really sure what that was about. So these guys are spotted. I've got the Valkyries that will come over there eventually. The second I see the Panoptises, I'm like, yeah, we're going to need some Valkyries over there. So they will eventually come over. I moved the tanks over here, but I see the shuttles, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to ignore those shit, and I'm going to try to just set here. Now, these guys are actually doing fairly well against everything that's over here, all things considered. These units get kind of separated over here, and the Panoptises kind of move over there. But the Phalanxes, wounded as they are getting in a lot of damage. They're definitely doing really quite well. So, TheShambler has some Patriarchs, which are fairly beefy. I'm able to tank a lot of this damage because Valkyries are very fat. And I end up destroying almost all the Panoptises right away. That lets TheShambler take the sledge and kill all of the attackers. There's still a couple of units over here, which he's going to mop up. He's got some Optimus Primes over there, which will help a little bit. So TheShambler did lose an expansion and lost a lot of his other workers in this expansion. So he's definitely hurting quite a bit. On the other hand, I've started expanding elsewhere, and I've started massing Gorgons. The Gorgons are mostly there as a distraction. Meanwhile, there is an ion cannon being built adjacent to Keyan. I thought about building ion cannons further away, but then I thought, no, I want him to dive the ion cannon. Because I had a horde of air units being built. There would also be more Valkyries coming. By the time this is ready to set up, the whole idea was to bait out any Panoptises and other air units they have, draw them into this area, and then just kill them with the Valkyries. Then a horde of Mayans, Vultures, and Sentinels would force all the ground units to bottleneck in this spot right here. Now, the ion cannon actually shot them. Ion cannons have been nerfed in this version. They have a lot longer of a cooldown now. If the ion cannon shot them in the middle of that choke, then it could force them out entirely. The worst thing that could happen is Keyan actually manages to drop a horde of units on top of the ion cannon. So that's kind of why I was starting to build assorted sentinels here. Oh yeah, and I devote heavily to this. There's a second ion cannon being built. At some point, I'm also going to get the atelier as well. That's going to go actually straight to a nanite assembly at some point later on. But for the moment, I'm kind of just massing up a horde of shit over here to apply a whole bunch of pressure. Keyan's refusal to take this expansion down here and general unwillingness to hold this ledge is going to result in a very large tumor growing in the side of his posterior. Meanwhile, Beaver is still concentrating a lot of units over there and is not at all interacting with the right side of the map. This is why I said earlier into the game, I didn't really have too much to do with Beaver in this, or really was paying attention to what Beaver and Shambler were doing, because I was kind of just doing my own little thing. I found a weakness in the map and I very well intended to exploit it. Meanwhile, while Shambler did have some success in attacking, more importantly is that he hasn't died terribly. So he's been able to hold that. Meanwhile, the proxying is beginning. So Beaver is going to head up here and is going to discover all these wardens that are being built as all of Keyan's workers are starting to die. So Keyan has assembled a drop force here and maybe looking to try to thwart this. He's heading over now. He probably doesn't suspect that there is this much shit. But there is this much shit. He decides to drop right here, which is going to discover that I've been farming vultures for like 5 years. Meanwhile, Beaver attacks over here with a whole horde of cataphracts. They're able to force back the Archons, but the Archons escape. Some of them are able to regenerate, the one isn't. The Optic Tons are going to just destroy this attack force easily, though. So no worries there. Keyan's expansion has now been destroyed. And I'm trying to spot with the Gorgons, but I kind of like forget, because I was like thinking there's going to be a larger attack on Shambler. There's so many Valkyries from Beaver, but Shambler never really gets much in the way of air units, just like some vultures. So I'm just spotting these. Eventually there's going to be an outbreak of other shit, but the Valkyries suddenly appearing here was a little surprising. However, the Valkyries almost all died to the ion cannons instantly. And the remainder of them died to my own Valkyries. So that's dealt with. I lost a lot of Gorgons for that, but that does slow me down a little bit here. I'm not really sure how to proceed at the moment. I sent over some units over here. They're going to die kind of pointless. I just wanted to see what kind of forces there was in front of their base. There was still phalanxes and there was stuff like that. So I was like, yeah, I won't bother with that too much. So I still haven't really fully saturated most of these bases. I usually just forget they exist. That's on a good day too. So Keyan decides at this point to ignore the horde of shit because of all the Valkyries that are over there. No concentrated effort to actually get rid of this, though. Beaver, other than his Valkyries, chooses actually not to interact with this. If they did a concentrated, unified attack, I think they actually could destroy this. But it's sort of reaching the point now where I'm able to build some auxiliary ion cannons and defend. Now, some Empyreans from Keyan have appeared over here, but I have a lot of Valkyries in this area here that could prove to be quite useful. So Archons and Valkyries against Vassals may be one of the few matchups that Vassals are actually not cost-effective in. So the attack is launched. I'm not paying attention here at the moment, but... Oh my god! Oh, the Panoptises are fucking massacred! Oh, that's horrible! I'm not even paying attention to what's going on in all of Keyan's shit! Just fucking melts! Oh my god! Oh, it was in this game he switched back. I know he had problems with his keyboard in another game he had to quit early in. Oh, I never saw that. That was just disgusting. I wasn't even watching that. I was dealing with the shit on the bottom right. I think I may have looked there when the vassals first came up. I didn't realize there was a whole bunch of shit behind it. Or if I did, it was only briefly. But all of his stuff died so horribly. Wow. But I mean, look, Shambler killed the most units by almost 2 folds. I don't think Shambler did too bad in that game at all. I mean, yeah, his economy is weak because he lost a lot. But it was Beaver who had the highest economy. But I took the early tech. The greedy opening got punished a little bit. I mean, even if I didn't do that, I still would have lost that top right base to the attack most likely because I wasn't expecting a big attack to come from there. But I rebounded from that and locked them down. I think really the main part that really kept us in the game was actually Shambler's Archons. They were expensive, but they kept him in the game. They stayed relevant. They were able to tank. They did very well against the unit compositions he was up against. And Keyan's major drop in his main getting deflected relatively easily allowed Shambler to kind of like rebalance. And Shambler was able to return a lot of damage on the Beaver that kept him on the back foot too. So, I think really what really like the big killing blows was like the fact they were kind of unwilling to stop me from sitting on that ledge. Most of my attacks against Keyan's base on that ledge were not very successful. The tanks killed the most workers. The rest of them just kind of like traded back and forth without really damaging the expansion very much. But once the ion cannons were back there, the half-hearted attempt to drop it instead of like committing everything they had right away or just trying to ignore it and put advantages elsewhere. The fact he took losses and then lost his ground units and his drops and then attacked Shambler and then lost everything there on top of it. It just was like, even if the Valkyries hadn't been there, I think that Shambler probably would have been able to hold it. And I would have eventually reinforced him anyways. So yeah, it was kind of a... But man, that was like the worst way to go. They all bunched up, moved forward, and just instantly died one after the other. That was so disgusting. Holy shit.